What's going on, guys? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content. On Tuesday we talked about monsters. We've seen some of the changes that are coming to Pathfinder 2nd Edition's bestiaries. Today we're looking in depth at how those monsters will appear in their stat blocks and how you'll run them on the battlefield. If you guys like what you're seeing, be sure to hit that like button, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And real quick, this episode of your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content was brought to you in part by Mr. John Diffley. John, thanks so much for your support. Now, roll initiative. Alright, so the first monster we're talking about today has been described as a gym bag that ate roadkill. If you're into Rise of the Rune Lords, you'll know they like to take over Varisian forts, and hey, if you'd like to watch us attack Fort Granick over at the Inn of Planar Crossroads, where yours truly plays an orc hunter with a warcat, follow this card right up here to be directed to the Inn of Planar Crossroads Rise of the Rune Lords playlist. I digress. Let's talk about the ogre. Alright, so as I look at the stat block, the first thing I have to say is it's much smaller than what I'm used to seeing in Pathfinder 1st Edition. I was actually just talking about this with the guys. The reason I came over to Pathfinder from 3.5 was because in my 3.5 games I was using Pathfinder monsters because the amount of experience that particular monster was worth was right at the top of the entry. Now we're not seeing it, but remember, experience is being overhauled as well. It's not a big bar that stretches into the millions. It's 0 to 1000, you've leveled, the counter resets to 0, and you push back up again. We can see that the ogre is chaotic, evil, a giant, a humanoid, and large. Its perception is +5 with dark vision, and it speaks giant. These things are right at the top of the entry. There's no defenses, there's no senses, it's all just right there, easy to find, and I really like that. Because even now, several years into my pathfinding career, sometimes I'll have to be like, oh, where is that on the sheet, and be scrolling back and forth while my players are in combat waiting. Another thing I like is that we've taken the ability scores and we've removed the obscenely high numbers. Of course, we know that ogre has a strength of 20 or 21, a dexterity of 8 or 9, a wisdom of 10 or 11, etc., etc. But in combat, you don't necessarily need to know that as the GM who's dug out some monsters to attack the players with. You just need to know what the bonus is. This is also true when you want to doctor the ogre behind the scenes. Of course, magic items will be very different in 2nd edition, but if I wanted to look at the ogre in depth and see what it did and what its bonuses to things were, I'd have to know, and some of us don't. A strength score of 20 or 21 meant you had a +5 on your strength related things. Now you don't have to know that. Now it's right there, and I really like that. In addition, we see no longer CR at the top right corner, we see creature 3. Another thing we don't see is the creature's hit dice. We see it has 60 HP, we see its armor class, its TAC or touch attack, as well as its saves, but we have just no clue how many hit dice this thing has, and that's probably because that will become less relevant in 2nd edition. We see this thing has a speed of 25 feet, it attacks in melee, there's the little action icon there, with an ogre hook at +10. The ogre hook has a reach of 10 feet, the trip property, and deadly 1d10. Which of course means it deals an additional d10 more damage on a critical hit, which means ogre hooks are something we look out for as PCs, because when we enchant that thing, it gets extra d10s, and well, we tear people up with an ogre hook. We see the damage is 1d10 +7, and the javelins are thrown in as well. Now, as we look at the picture of the bugbear that Wayne Reynolds has provided us, where Yoda has buffed out, gained some hair, and picked up a stick with some sharp things sticking out of it that it probably refers to as a morning star, let's see what Paizo has to say about this thing. Quote, "This is an example of one of the simplest stat blocks in the playtest. Ogres are big bruisers, and they don't have a whole lot of special actions to use. They play a role as big challenges for low-level groups, and in groups as minions for high-level threats." Paizo also notes that the stat block is shorter and says they think this will give them more room for other text in our bestiaries and adventures, which basically we can interpret as, hooray, more flavor text. Now, one thing I didn't note when we were talking about the stat block is the skills. We see this little +1 hanging out here. What does that mean? To quote Paizo, the skills entry first lists a number you can use in addition to the relevant ability modifier for any skills the monster doesn't have listed. The ogre has acrobatics and athletics. If he needs to make a swim check, which we assume is keyed to strength still, he would add his strength of 5, and I really like how simple that is, +1 to get a +6 on our roll when our ogre needs to swan dive. Now, there's a lot of changes to the stat block for the monster. The ability score thing definitely is different. Paizo explains, much the same way I feel about it, that this lets you make calculations more quickly. And since monsters don't increase their scores the same way PCs do, listing the scores is unnecessary. Monsters with items also list those up top, so if the ogre had gloves of ogre power, we'd see it at the top. Before we jump to the next monster, Paizo notes that the stat block is organized so that you're looking at the middle section when it is not the monster's turn and the bottom section on its turn. They think that will make it easier to use at the table. You know, I think I agree with you. It's all kind of just right there in 3 different blocks. In Pathfinder 1st Edition, we had senses, defenses, offense, skills, the CMB, CMD, all the languages down at the bottom, feats buried somewhere in there as well that you might or might not even know is on the monster if you're improvising, and then as you're going home after the game's over, you remember, oh, the cave giants had power attack and furious focus and greater sunder. The party should all be dead and eaten by cave giants. Now it's all, again, just 1, 2, 3. Top for the numbers and stuff that you'll need, and some out of combat. Middle for when it's being attacked. Bottom for when you're attacking. Now, let's go to monster number 2, the Redcap. Alrighty, so we're looking at creature 5. It's evil, a fey, and small. Its perception is +10. Remember, that's usually its initiative score as well, right up there at the top for you. And we see that it has low light vision. It speaks Aklo, Common, Giant, and Sylvan. It adds a +5 to skills it doesn't have, but it's got a lot of skills. Acrobatics, athletics, deception, nature, as in lore, and stealth, +13. So that means when the Redcaps attack the party, we want to be sure the Redcaps are sneaking up so they can use their stealth, or maybe even their acrobatics, as they dive out of a tree at the party for their initiative because it is higher than their perception. We see all their stats are positive, +4 strength and dex and con, +3 intelligence, +1 wisdom, +2 charisma. We see it's carrying a red cap, how appropriate, an expert medium scythe, and iron boots. The red cap itself is a shapeless woolen hat dyed with the blood of its victims. Hooray! If the red cap loses its cap, it no longer benefits from fast healing. It has fast healing, that's scary, I didn't even see that at the top where the defenses should go, and takes a -4 conditional penalty to its damage rolls. It can create a new cap in 10 minutes, but that cap doesn't grant its full powers until the red cap has turned it red with blood soak, an ability we'll see as we scroll down, I'm sure. A cap has no benefit for creatures other than red caps, so murder hobos, don't do it. Let the little guy keep his hat. Now as we reach the middle part, this being the part we'll probably be looking at more, again, when we're being attacked, we see we have an armor class of 20, a touch armor class of 19, fortitude save 8, reflex save 11, will save 9. We've got 55 hit points, and there we see the fast healing 10, all rolled up there where we can easily find it. We see the weaknesses for the first time. We're weak to cold iron 5, which means that we'll take 5 more damage on our red cap when the players hit us with a cold iron weapon. And we've got a weakness called Irreligious. Irreligious states that if a red cap sees a creature brandish a holy symbol of a good deity, or use one for the material casting of a divine spell, the red cap must attempt a DC 17 will save. On a failure, the red cap is frightened for and fleeing for 1 round. On a success, it's frightened 2, and on a critical success, so if you roll a 20 or beat the DC by 10, which of course means we'll need to roll an 18, 19, or 20, given a +9 on the will save. To brandish a holy symbol, a creature must interact to brandish it for 1 round, similar to raising a shield, which means the player will use 1 action to do this. Once a red cap has attempted a save against the brandished holy symbol, it is bolstered against brandished holy symbols for the next 10 minutes. And now we move down to the bottom of the sheet where we see the red cap's offensive abilities. We've got a speed of 50 feet, so we're super fast. Our scythe hits for +13. It's got deadly 1d10 and trip, not unlike the ogre hook. And this guy's doing 2d10 +4 slashing damage when he swings his scythe. That's a lot of damage for such a little dude. It also appears that we'll have a second attack with 1 action, the way this is written, by attacking with the boot that this thing is carrying for 2d4 +8 piercing damage. Our second action is known as Blood Soak. The red cap dips its cap in the blood of a slain foe. The foe must have died in the last minute, and the red cap must have helped kill it. The red cap gains a +4 conditional bonus on damage rolls for 1 minute, so it gets even worse as this guy is tearing you apart with his scythe and his boot. We also see an R in brackets, which indicates a reaction, Deadly Cleave. The trigger for this reaction, the red cap drops a creature to 0 hit points with a scythe strike. The effect being the red cap makes another scythe strike against a different creature, using the same multiple attack penalty as the scythe strike that triggered this reaction. So in that first round, if you drop a creature to 0 hit points with a big ol' scythe critical throwing all your d10s at the table, you get to attack somebody else. Of course, this does count towards the multiple attack penalty, which I'm interpreting as that counting as the second attack, so you'd take a -10 on your third attack as the red cap swings, so it doesn't become just the most OP thing in the world as the red cap is tearing through the party with its scythe. Last action we've got is the stomp. When the red cap stomps, it strides up to half its speed, so 25 feet, and makes a boot strike at any point during that movement. If the boot strike hits a prone creature, it deals an extra 2d6 persistent bleed damage. Speaking of that boot, it's important to note the boot up there has the agile quality, so a -4 instead of a -5 for its iterative attacks, and versatile B, which we're assuming means it will, in addition to piercing damage, do bludgeoning damage. And this essentially becomes how our red cap starts the fight. You just run up and stomp on people, how rude, and then you start cutting them to pieces with your scythe and dipping your hat in their blood. Okay, I guess rude's out the table. An interesting thing the blog notes here, quote, "One of the nice things about the new system of building monsters is that we can just give monsters the statistics we want them to have instead of sometimes building them in strange ways to get their statistics to be good. For instance, in Pathfinder 1st Edition, a Fae might have had far more hit dice than expected to get its statistics high enough, which led to odd results from abilities that counted hit dice. Now the red cap gets statistics that are suited for its level and how it's used. But enough about that, let's take it home with innate magic. Quote, "These are much like spell-like abilities from Pathfinder 1st Edition, but they function more like spells than they used to. The only difference between these and other spells is that the number of times the monster can cast them is based on the monster itself rather than on a spellcasting class. Innate spell entries look much like prepared spells, with a couple extra categories of usability. The last thing we've got for you today is the Innate Arcane spells of the Ifriti. The Innate Arcane spells have a DC of 22, an attack of +17. The Ifriti has Detect Magic as a constant, Illusory Object at 5th level, Gaseous Form and Invisibility twice at 4th level. At will, it can use Plane Shift at 7th level to the Elemental Planes, Astral Plane, or Material Plane only. And it has Produce Flame as a 4th level cantrip. So the first thing we see here is all of the spells will have the exact same DC, and they don't scale. The 5th level one isn't more powerful than the 4th level one, which is a lot less downtime in combat, especially for the guy who's not prepared and suddenly wants to cast that new spell or realizes he's rolled over to that even level. All his DCs are haywire, he forgot he bought a charisma headband, and 5 minutes pass before the combat continues. Anywho, to make further sense of this, quote, "The spell DC is listed right there, along with the attack bonus for touch attacks, since the Ifriti has Produce Flame. Illusory Object is presented the same way a prepared 5th level spell would be, as our Gaseous Form and the 2 spell slots of Invisibility. Anything that doesn't come in a level entry is cast at its lowest level, unless a level appears in parentheses. You can see that happening with the Produce Flame cantrip, which the Ifriti casts as a 4th level spell. Its Detect Magic is level 1, but that's a constant ability that functions all the time for the Ifriti. The other special way a creature can use its innate spells is with at-will spells. These are spells the monster can cast as many times as it wants, even though they aren't normally cantrips. So yeah, that looks pretty much about the same, but I will say I really like that all of the DCs are rolled together. I really like that the red cap seems really scary. I never used them in Pathfinder 1st Edition because I never felt like playing that game, but in 2nd Edition, hey, might have to break them out. But what do you guys think of these monsters? Are you excited to GM for Pathfinder 2nd Edition? Again, what's the monster that you want to see the most make it into the playtest? But most of all, Are we still stoked out there for a new edition of Pathfinder? Because, hey, again, if you are, we're playing Doomsday Dawn right here on Black Dragon Gaming as soon as it drops. 6 lucky subscribers will be taken through Doomsday Dawn by yours truly. If you'd like to learn more about the giveaway that we're holding to pick those 6 lucky subscribers, follow this card right up here. Remember that patronage at any tier grants you a second entry. And hey, you know, if we can get our patronage up about $100 more, get it to around the $300 mark, I'll run 2 groups through. Again, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos. The next episode of your Pathfinder 2nd Edition preview content drops next Tuesday.